So it just aches. I mean, listen, bro. I think aches can. I think aches it does a pretty good job of eliciting a lot of emotion out of people when he talks about competitive COD. He's always been that way. I mean, he's been here from the beginning. He was always the villain during my era when I was on OpTic, but he's not a stupid person. I think people a lot of times will invalidate his opinion because they think he's just like a hater. And there's definitely things I've heard him say where I'm like, okay, Pat, I don't know if you're just trying to press this a little too far because you're trying to get everybody worked up or if you actually believe that. But everybody is talking about champs being in Texas. It was basically like a home event. It was a home event for OpTic, but to be honest with you, bro, like this is what basically went down. Hold on. Okay. So this is basically the tweet. Activision 100% should be hosting their own champs event, not OpTic, but we all know that OpTic home crowd advantage would have been there regardless, especially come Sunday. Both things can be true. I can't even fathom how it's even being argued. You're right, and every pro will tell you as well. Tippable, for sure, though. OpTic home series, security def do something about the fans, too, using racial slurs and saying unacceptable things. The players should never be a thing, either at any sporting event. That's insane. People saying that the event shouldn't be team hosted and hearing OpTic shouldn't have won when no one is saying that. Brain dead ass people. Look, man, I mean, I want to make sure I say this right, or at least talk through this properly. Listen, bro, if I'm a player, I totally understand where these guys are coming from. Like, it is bizarre that the major or the COD champs, pretty much traditionally up until this year, was kind of like a CDL Activision ran event. It was the staff of Activision and the CDL handling the logistics and the hosting of the entire venue. And when you switch it up and you make it a team running the venue for champs, I can understand where the players are coming from, for sure. But at the end of the day, if fans are yelling shit like this, it's unacceptable, bro. And I saw Hector tweet about this. People saying something, a video. People saying something to Sender, who used to be on OpTic, was a coach for OpTic, is a good kid. I don't think the event happening in Texas changes what people, in open space with their own freedoms are going to say. Maybe they felt a little bit more comfortable knowing it was an OpTic event, that nobody was going to kick them out since they were all OpTic fans. I don't know, but it's not right, no matter how you cut it. These rivalries and your distaste or disdain for another team other than OpTic, it has no place here. Like, you can't, just because you want OpTic to win so badly doesn't mean you're going to start dogging on these players. Like, they don't deserve it. That's not how the real world works. But I will say, like, I just don't think that there's a venue that you're going to go to where OpTic fans aren't the loudest and the majority in the room. I mean, I've never seen it. I've never seen an event. Honestly, like, that Toronto event is like maybe the only thing that I can think of. When the home cities actually threw these events, and if their team made it far into the tournament, there definitely was like more of a push behind them from the home crowd than they've ever had before, at least from my era, when it was just like MLG events going to convention centers around the country before they had the franchise, before they had the geo-located cities and teams. But at the end of the day, like, I think the OpTic fan base, like, they show up in droves and in numbers any venue they go to. So I don't think that you can ever really even avoid the advantage that these guys are alluding to for the players on OpTic Gaming, So I don't think that the crowd affected the outcome. Is it more comfortable for the players, like, when they have a big play, to hear the crowd get behind them? Like, a home crowd certainly makes a difference in traditional sports. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion to think that isn't the case in esports. I think it certainly helps, but again, like the underlying issue that I see with all of this, especially with the complaints that I've seen, is that there just is always going to be a home field advantage no matter where you go for OpTic gaming. That's how it's always been, man. And it's, if I'm a player, dude, I get it. I understand why people would think that's unfair, but it's not really, it's not, nobody has control over that. So, see, I didn't even know OpTic won that major 3 in Toronto. That's crazy. That's like a great point. That's a great point. It's always kind of like a catch-22 as well. Like, I always think that people need to be a little careful with how they, it's like COD esports wouldn't exist if there wasn't such a ravenous fan base like OpTic. Like, I know people, some people, depending on who you are, don't want to hear that for the 1,000th millionth time, but it's true. You kind of got to be careful what you wish for, man. Like, it's funny. I think esports has been in kind of a lull, but Call of Duty, in a way, oddly enough, seems like it's a little. It's like we're in our own little bubble, dude. We're in our own little vacuum where we're unaffected by the real world perils of and like the winds changing in esports. I would say, like, if OpTic runs deep into a tournament, bro, there's gonna be a couple 100,000 people watching, no matter what. Like, even though competitive COD, like, throughout the year has its moments where, like, rank play isn't as interesting, people aren't playing it as much anymore. Like, Call of Duty always has that cycle in the year where it's not as interesting, not as many people are playing it, and it's kind of like a grind to get to the end of the season for the players and the community. But no matter what, the events always perform well. Like, the majors always have a level of viewership that I think a lot of other esports kind of would love to have the consistency that Call of Duty has. And I think OpTic's legacy is a big part of that too. And I think the players know that. But it's still wild to me, bro. Like, you know, I don't mean to, like, bring something up that isn't relevant to this conversation. But if you want to hear my honest take, I am still shocked that Draza decided to go over to FaZe instead of OpTic. I get it from a roster perspective. Like, if I'm Draza and my hardest matches that I've played for the last 2 years have been against Celium, Simp, and Abizi, if I'm solely thinking about winning exclusively and only care about that, which I know some of you guys would argue that's like the most important thing and the only thing players should care about, but I disagree with that statement in itself. But if I were Draza's, like, manager, or if I were making the decision for him, I would have said, yo, I don't give a fuck what you think. You're going to go play for OpTic. Like, if I'm a player, under any circumstance do I ever, in any capacity, decline a opportunity given to me by Hector and the OpTic Call of Duty team? I mean, obviously it worked out for OpTic. This guy Kenny is just, the man just rises to the occasion, bro. What was it? What was that map, chat, that had, like, the trains on the far right and on the far left? It was a street with a couple cars, and in the middle was, like, a broken building in Berlin. Bro, I will never forget against FaZe in that COD Champs final, or maybe it was Winners Finals, or the round right before COD Champ Finals in Vanguard on Berlin. This guy, Kenny, like, legitimately, I've never seen anything like it. The guy just hit his second gear. Like, I don't know about you, but after watching Kenny for years and years and years, having him part of LA Thieves, and I mean this with all due respect, bro, there were certainly maps and events where I'm like, yo, this guy is supposed to be our fucking all-star, superstar player, and he's having a couple stinker maps, you know. And I'm not saying it's because he wasn't performing well. Like, sometimes that's just the way it goes. Your timings are completely off. Like, it seems like every time you die, you're just not in a favorable situation to get a kill, and you need to pull off something fucking miraculous just to get out of the cycle that you're in. It happens, bro. You guys might not think that happens to pro players, but sometimes there are just, like, you are stuck in a 2-3 minute fucking cycle where it just feels impossible to get a kill. And that would happen every now and again for Kenny. I don't know if that was the exact situation why, you know, he would have, like, highs and lows, but he was definitely a streaky player when he was a part of LA Thieves. But every time they made it to, like, a final, whether it was at a major or at COD Champs, Kenny would turn into like a different player. And I have this visceral memory of him on Berlin fighting around like the second story area. I don't remember the hard points, but it was the hard point that, or maybe even in control when it was on the, by the street side in that second story building where there's the staircase up and on each side. And this guy was just P2. Perfect, Danny. That my man's locked. Kenny was on P2 and it was just like he literally hit another gear that no other player was able to hit. I mean, the guy was just in flow state and there was nothing anyone was going to do to stop him. Like he was willing a win into existence. I know that sounds dramatic or could sound corny, but I think that's just like the X factor of Kenny, brother. He just shows up when he needs to the most, and he shows up better and bigger than everybody else. Like what, that first hard point against NYSL in the grand finals, I think he was like 28-15. And if you look at like just the week alone of COD Champs, there were moments where he was like tweeting about, yo, I couldn't get a kill this third map, I couldn't get a kill that map. Like I think that's like such a tippable attribute that not many players have, where I think you can always rely on Kenny to perform at the highest level when he needs to the most. I'm really happy for Pred. Pred seems like a good kid, even though he's bullshitting in that podcast, talking about, oh, I remember watching Road to Master Prestige and Nadeshot was getting shit on. Shut the fuck up, dude. You tell me you remember watching a video from 2013 when we were playing League Play, just slamming kids. Like, League Play wasn't even, like, ranked as it is today. There were no good players, bro. There was nobody. Shut the fuck up, Pred. I'm happy for you, though, bro. But, yeah, I think all of this is getting kind of blown out of proportion. It's tough, man. But even when I was playing on OpTic, I understood why other players would either hate OpTic or hate the situation they're in, because we always had, like, a quote-unquote advantage because the crowd was always behind us. Like, I would put myself in other people's shoes, and I'm like, man, it would be hard to play against OpTic. It would suck. Especially if you think you're, like, a better player, a better team, you deserve more recognition, even though you're not getting it. I get it, but this is just, like, how the Call of Duty community is and how it's been since the dawn of fucking time. No, Looney, I'm not... I appreciate that. Like, I appreciate the sentiment, but there were definitely times where it was like, oh, fuck, like, I would not want to be that guy on the other team. And it's like, there really is nothing different between me and him other than the fact that I joined OpTic at the right time and yada, yada, yada. But I'm just saying, like, I can see both sides of the argument, bro. But that's why in my head, like, why I brought up Draza. I'm like, if you get an opportunity to join OpTic, you fucking take it, bro. Under any circumstance, do you ever say no to OpTic? I just can't. I can't put myself in that place mentally to... But at the same... Actually, I can't put myself in that place mentally. Like, Simp, Abizi, Celium, that almost seems and feels like a sure thing. Like, you're going to walk out of that team with at least a handful of championships. Like, at minimum, bro. So, I don't know.